Welcome back, folks. It is time for another video. Our focus this time is going to be on the periodic table. Now, there will be several videos over the periodic table, but this is just a brief introduction to the structure of the periodic table and some of the properties that the chemicals have based on their locations in the periodic table. So this will be a very short, brief introduction to that periodic table. So let's get started. Our learning targets today, hopefully by the end of this video, you should be able to understand the purpose of the periodic table and how it is organized, and also be able to evaluate the periodic table for a variety of chemical properties. Again, we're only going to focus on a select few properties in this video, but as we continue through the school year, you'll find that there are quite a few properties and trends that are present in the periodic table that can be determined based on the element's specific location in the periodic table. So we have a couple new vocabulary terms we're going to look at, mostly group, family, period, metal, nonmetal, and metalloid. We'll talk just a little bit about those as we move forward. So first and foremost, a little bit of fanfare, da-da-da-da. This is the periodic table. You're going to be using this a lot in this class. This organizes chemicals by specific properties, and you've probably seen the periodic table before. You probably even recognize some of the elements that are listed here. Within the next unit or so, I'm going to ask you to memorize a select few of them. Not a lot, but a few. It makes life a little bit easier going through the periodic table. But like I said, you'll be utilizing this a lot, and you'll notice that there are different colors. The different colors represent different groups and different areas in the periodic table, and those elements in those areas have different and unique properties. Like I said, we won't go through all of the different properties today, but this is something you definitely want to become more familiar with. So we get asked a lot about some of the unique names that are on the periodic table, and a lot of these names go back to ancient Rome or ancient Greece and the original names for these elements, and they just kind of stuck throughout history. So most of us know that sodium is Na. Well, originally it was known as natrium. Iron was originally known as ferrium. So if you've ever heard of a farrier before, farriers are individuals who tend to work with iron. That's just kind of where the name comes from. Lead, Pb for plumbium, kind of like the word plumber. Originally the pipes that were used were made of lead. So you've got a long list here just of some really interesting names. One that I like and is just kind of some interesting facts here is silver, which is Ag for argentum. That's actually where the name for the country Argentina originated. Argentina is, I believe, Spanish for land of silver. So that's kind of where that name comes from. But you see, there's a lot of interesting names that are on the periodic table, and they come from ancient Greek and ancient Roman roots. So just a little bit about the organization here. If we're going across the periodic table, those are known as periods. So as you can see here, we've got 7 periods on this periodic table. You see I know it is the F block, but the 58 through 71 and the 90 through the 103, those are actually extensions of the 6th and 7th period. And then groups or families are the vertical columns that go up and down, and the vertical columns are the ones that share similar properties. So what you'll learn is that first group is known as the alkali metals, and they all share very similar properties. Group 17 is known as the halogens, 18 noble gases, and so on. And all of these share very similar properties. We'll talk about why that's the case here in a little bit. Now, if we see let's look at number 5, for example, element 5, and you see kind of that baby puke green color that's 5, 14, 32, 33, 51, 52, and 85. We call that the stair step on the periodic table. And that actually helps us define what is considered a metal and what is considered a non-metal on the periodic table. So on the far left to that stair step, you have the metals. And metals are good conductors of electricity and heat. You probably are aware of that. A lot of these things are used to conduct electricity. Copper wire is a good example of that. They're used to conduct heat. The term we use is malleable and ductile. Malleable just means that it's easily bendable. So if we get pieces of copper, we have the ability to bend them and mold them into the shapes that we want. Ductile just means that it's able to be strung out into a wire. So copper, for example, is used very frequently in wire to conduct electricity. So all of the metals are, again, to the left of the stair step, and they're malleable and ductile. We can bend them and mold them and shape them. Some are easier to shape than others. Some require a little bit of heat in order to shape them, but all metals are malleable and ductile to an extent. Now, to the right of that stair step, you have what are called the nonmetals. And nonmetals are very poor conductors of electricity and heat. It's why you don't see very many bromine wires that are out there. They're also brittle and breakable. So if you actually get a chunk of sulfur in your hand, it's kind of breaks apart very, very easily. Kind of crumbles in your hands. So nonmetals tend to be breakable and brittle. They're poor conductors of electricity, and again, they're to the right of that stair step. Now, the stair step itself are known as metalloids, and they're in between metals and nonmetals, so they exhibit some properties of metals and some properties of nonmetals, and also the properties tend to be in between that. So they're somewhat brittle, but they're also somewhat malleable and somewhat ductile, so they're kind of that in between the metals and the nonmetals. So again, just a brief introduction to the periodic table. Nothing too fancy here, but understand that it is organized in a way to easily recognize a variety of chemical properties. And keep in mind that metals are to the left of the stair step, nonmetals are to the right of the stair step, and metalloids are on the stair step. So hopefully that makes sense. Just again, a brief introduction to the periodic table. I hope it made sense to you, made sense to me. But then again, I am a chemistry teacher, so I hope you had a good time, and we will see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.